And good morning. On a Monday, I'm Charlie Seraphin. The following forum is a paid broadcast. The views and opinions expressed by the guests on the broadcast are theirs alone and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the host, the station, or its owners. KMOG is exempt from any liability should arise from these broadcasts. And we want to thank our sponsors this morning before we get going. Dana Law Group, Dan Good Flooring, Hospitality Wireless, Pinnacle Propane, Choice Auto and Truck, and Sunshine Cleaning and Restoration. And good morning to all of our guests in studio. Let me get the mics on here, and we'll go one, we'll go two, we'll go three. We have Gary Morris, who is the chairman of the GILA County Republican Party. Good morning, Gary.
Good morning.
And we have Andy McKinney. Good morning, Andy.
Good morning, everybody out there in Radio Land.
All right, and Brenda Barton. Good morning, Brenda.
Yes, and good morning to everyone.
So, what's going on in the Republican Party?
Walt, too.
Oh, we got Walt Blackman. Shall we put him up there on the phone? Good morning, Walt. Excellent. Good to hear from you this morning. So, give us a brief roundup, if you will, of what's going on in GILA County and the Republican Party.
Well, the Republican Party headquarters has been pretty active. In fact, in June we saw 1,395 visitors. July it picked up to 1,469, and the volume of visitors continues. The headquarters is located at 434 South Beeline Highway, and it's open weekdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., Saturdays from 10 to 2 p.m., and you can register to vote, pick up campaign literature, yard signs, and so on and so forth. Also housed at the headquarters is the Trump Depot. This is a store full of Trump-related merchandise. You get Trump hats, Trump shirts, flags, all kinds of items, including jewelry for the ladies. So we invite you to come by and visit with us.
All right. And we had an election. I guess the lead up to it was so long that it feels like it was about 3 years ago already, and it's only been a couple of days. But how do you feel about the results that we saw here in GILA County?
I think we did pretty well. It's a disappointing loss in Sylvia Allen's race for state Senate seat. But the voters have voted, and we move on to the general, and all the candidates are already campaigning. We have Brenda and Walt joining us today to talk about their campaigns. So we're looking forward to November. And I think the general public is tiresome. They would like to vote tomorrow to move on in their lives.
I think one of the things that prompts that is the fact that there was so much negativity in this past campaign. We've had it in the past, but it just seemed more intense this time than ever before.
It walked down from the national campaign with the Trump campaign all the way down to local state offices.
All right, well, why don't you jump into the discussion in terms of Brenda and Representative Blackman and what you'd like to get them focused on this morning.
Well, they won their elections. Let's get some feedback of where they are, and let's find out what happens next coming up on the general election. Let's start with Brenda.
Okay, good morning then. Thank you everyone who voted for us and made sure that we are going to be on the ballot in November. I really appreciate all the work that you've done, and of course your vote. I appreciate that so much. So here's some areas that I believe I'm going to focus on now and after I'm elected, and that would be basically workforce housing and the homeless situation we have, education, Arizona's parental choice, and also ballot chain of custody. Those three things are really important, not only just in elections, but in our overall governance, in our communities and our state. So in order for our economy to grow, and in order to support our businesses, we have to have a place for the employees to live that they can afford. So workforce housing is important for economic growth, and businesses Businesses need workers to live where they work, and to avoid long commutes and that sort of thing. It's a symbiotic relationship between the employers and the employees. So we need to work on, I know that there's some things that we can do. I've talked to several people about this. And so we just have to put our thinking caps on, and it's going to take some money, but I don't think it'll take a lot of money if we can get everyone to work together on the same page for the same successful situation. And of course, education with parental choice for our parents, very important. Considering what we've been going through with the COVID and schools have been closed and the pandemic and all that, parents have been looking for effective alternatives to education for their children. So I think we need to look into the homeschool and the alternatives. Even some people have been talking about small neighborhood pod school operations so that the kids go within their neighborhood. A group of parents come together and create a system and use online education for their students, for their children. I think this is something we need to make sure that our Arizona laws allow so that parents still have the choice on who and what education the children have. Very, very important. Chain of custody for ballots. So these are things that people have been talking to me about, and of course it's been on the news and all that sort of thing. But I think that in Arizona, our early ballot system is really very good, considering some of the things that have been happening on the East Coast. So one of the things that I heard was that the envelopes on the return ballots were not postmarked with a date. So we know that receiving of our early ballots is date sensitive. It has to be returned by a specific date. So we need to consider how we can get the cooperation with the United States Post Office, which the state of Arizona cannot command or pass laws, but if their requirement is it has to have basically like a live stamp put on the envelope, then maybe we need to consider the return envelope of our early ballots has an actual stamp on it. That way, when it goes through the postage system, it will have a cancellation date, and we can use that date to ensure that when the ballots are returned in time, they're counted. If they're returned too late, then as the law says, it has to be turned in by such and such date, then we know for sure we have evidence on the envelope itself. So those are some things that I'm looking at.
All right, let's turn to Representative Walt Blackman, who's on the telephone with us this morning. Congratulations, Representative Blackman, on another primary victory.
Seatmates, and we are extremely grateful moving forward. And we are going to miss Senator Allen being in the Senate to campaign for parent choice for schools and those issues. The things that I think that we need to really concentrate on when we're talking about the general, if we look at the election, we had 40% of folks come out and vote. Of course, Gila County always exceeds that, and I'm grateful to the Gila County Republican Club, Jerry Morris, for leading that effort charge. However, across the district, we need more folks to come out and vote. And if we're able to do that, if we can get people to the polls to do that, then our numbers be a lot higher. And I think people want a safe community. They want a safe district. We don't want something that's going to mimic Seattle, California, or New York. We want to be able to continue to fund our police. We want to be able to keep our communities and our children safe, and we need to be able to send our kids back to school. And that's important. Our kids have been out of school since March, and now there's still some uncertainty when these kids will be able to get back to school. And the liberal left would love it to have us sit in our homes for the rest of the year until after the election, of course. Then everybody will be through it probably, according to the Democrats. But we need to move forward, and we do that by leading from the front and having folks understand that this COVID virus is not going anywhere. We have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. That means we need to be able to send our kids back to school and let the districts mitigate the risk factor of this opening up businesses so we can create our revenue, generate that new revenue for Arizona, and get people back to work. So those are some of the main efforts that I want to push when we get back into the session. And most of all, just to make sure that we get Arizona back on track.
Excellent. We'll be back with more from our guests in just a moment. Happy Monday to you. I'm Charlie Seraphin on the Rim Country Forum on KMOG. We've got a full house today. Andy McKinney is here, Gary Morris is here, Brenda Barton also in studio, and on the telephone we have Representative Walt Blackman. So welcome to all of you, and here we go again. We do have competition coming up in this next round in the general election, so you want to talk a little bit about who some of the opposition candidates are.
Well, both Walt and Brenda know who their competition is. Let's start with Walt to talk about what he's going up against and his campaign plan.
Well, thanks a lot, Gary. Well, we're going to get against two liberals coming out of Flagstaff. The first one is the Coral Evans, who is the failed mayor out of that city. As we know, that they recently got over a hurdle of their pension fund. However, she had to do that by leasing off or mortgaging off her city buildings. So ever since that administration has been in place, they have basically really run Flagstaff into the ground. We're talking financial gain. Taxpayers are struggling. Businesses are closing because of the increase in the wage, the minimum wage increase in Flagstaff. Also, the state is looking at suing Flagstaff for stepping out in front of the COVID, in front of the governor, in front of the state. And then they're going to also lose their earned state revenues for poor management of their dollars. And that's someone we really don't need running an LD6 or actually being a representative. And then we have Art Babbitt, who proclaims to be an independent, however, he's a socialist. And there's plenty of documentation that proves that. And the reason why I bring that up is because people need to know exactly who they are voting for. They need to know if the person has their true face. Art Babbitt has been contributing to the Bernie Sanders efforts for the last 30 years. 3 years ago, he was a Democrat, a registered Democrat. This year, he's an independent. So, I really like to know who he is. And I think that the people of LD6 deserve to know that he is a known socialist, that he supports that left-leaning radical agenda, and that he is wearing a false or fake hat when putting himself out in front of representatives or the people of LD6. So it's important that people know that. What Brenda and I bring to the table is conservative values. We bring Second Amendment protection. We also bring the efforts to stop the increase of abortions and to make sure that our kids are educated and parents have the proper options to allow their children to go to whatever school they deem necessary to go to. And then we have the issue that both of those two candidates support the new sex education bill that the Superintendent of Public Instruction, which is a Democrat, is trying to cram down the throats of Arizona, everyday Arizonans. And of course, it's an appropriate piece of legislation to try to push, but we need to make sure that this stuff is brought out front and people understand that if we don't keep the House, then these are the types of legislation that we will see in the state of Arizona. But those are, that's from my viewpoint. I'm sure that Brenda has some other examples that she'd like to throw in about who we're running against. However, this is very important that people get out and vote.
Brenda, how about it?
Well, yes, sir. Actually, I agree with everything that Walt has presented to the audience. And again, these are some of the same things that need to be in the public domain so that people understand their background and their goals. very liberal, and it's very true about the city of Flagstaff. They've had many, many problems, and much of it goes back to the separate voter initiative that was passed in Flagstaff for the city of Flagstaff, just within the city, to require a $2 plus minimum wage above whatever the state minimum wage is. It's been devastating to a lot of the small businesses and the part-time job folks and the students up there. They were thinking, I'm sure, when they voted for it, that they were going to be making the increased minimum wage on their part-time jobs. But what happened is the part-time jobs disappeared, and there were no part-time jobs because the owners of a lot of these small businesses ended up having to come back in and do the work themselves. So instead of hiring people and growing the economy there, it was really retarded back and was not allowed to grow. So a lot of the small businesses actually, they had to do the work themselves, and they couldn't expand. Many of them have gone out of business. Actually, they just couldn't make it with the wages and all of the city council requirements on planning and zoning and all of the things that extra stuff that they had to complete. And again, our other competitor, Art Babbitt, yes, a lifelong Democrat. He was, well, I think he currently still is a sitting Coconino County supervisor. He said that he was the only independent that was elected, but I don't think he was elected as an independent in the county of Coconino. He was elected a Democrat. So he is a lifelong Democrat. So we need to remember that, you know, when the enemy of our country and our state and our local communities comes in, it comes in like a flood, but they come in hidden ways. They don't come in and tell you everything that they are or what they want to really do. So we have to be aware of what is happening and how we can discern what we need to do for the future.
It seems so often that the promises up front or the theory behind it is very attractive, and oftentimes attractive to voters, that we're going to increase the minimum wage by $2 over whatever the state says. That, if you're working in a part-time job, that sure sounds good, but the reality sometimes is very different than what the promise is.
Right, and that's a good example that it really is different, because we don't have money trees in all of our cities and towns where you can just go out and glean out a bunch of money because you've got a new program that you want to fund. It comes from the taxpayers, and it comes from our small businesses and our industries and our economy. So the wages that you earn come from the business that employs you. And if they're not growing and if they don't increase their customers, then they don't have enough funds to expand their workforce.
Representative Blackman, how about you? Have you seen any money trees out there? I know you've done a lot of travel during the campaign.
Yeah, no, they're not out there, and I'm looking for them so we can continue to fund some of these programs that are so important to us. And again, I agree with what Brenda is saying. When this minimum wage hike went to the ballot a few years ago, you will often hear the city council push the blame off to the people. I have two problems with that. The first problem is when something goes wrong, if these people are in the house and if things don't go right, are they going to blame LD6, the people of LD6? That's the first problem I have, if they don't succeed. The second is small businesses take a real hit in Flagstaff with this. I've met with the chambers and many business owners in Flagstaff, and they are up to their neck in frustration when we're talking about them trying to keep their doors open, them trying to meet payroll, and them trying to just run their business. And this is all before COVID, mind you. Now with COVID, and then in September, there is going to be another mandated increase on their minimum wage. We're going to see more businesses close in Flagstaff and across the state. JLBC did an analysis on this, and they, as the rest of the state was gaining revenue, and the economy was doing well for the rest of the state, Flagstaff, in fact, was not growing. And that is because of failed policies from AmeriCorps or others. We look over at the county supervisors. During the COVID, there was a deal put together to house homeless folks in a hotel, which was costing taxpayers up to $100,000 a month. And we're talking a 500-room hotel, and at one point they had 3 people in that hotel, 3 homeless people in that hotel. So bad policies and bad decision making. Art Babbitt was part of that supervisor's board appropriation to do this hotel. Just terrible management. We don't need that in the time of COVID right now. We need steady leadership. We need folks that are going to go out like Brenda and I, that have the experience to help our economy grow, that have an interest in rural development. Brenda was the chairman of the Rural Caucus, and I am a member of the Rural Caucus, and I'm sure she's going to go back and be part of that organization that look after rural Arizona issues and know those issues. These two folks in Flagstaff don't have a clue what's going on. They spend money like it's growing on trees, and it's at the expense of the taxpayer. And it's just something we can't afford during this time.
It's Gila County Republican Monday on the Rim Country Forum. We'll have more right after this. It's a Monday morning here in Rim Country. I'm Charlie Seraphin, your host on the Rim Country Forum, and it is, as we said, Gila County Republican Monday. Within studio, Gary Morris, who's the chairman of the Gila County Republican Party. Andy McKinney is here. We have a candidate, Brenda Martin, and we have State Representative Walt Blackman on the telephone. Well, let's start with you, Brenda, if we can. And for those people who are interested in contacting you to discuss the issues prior to the general election, how can they get in touch with you?
Okay, you can go to my website. It's barton4az.com. ZZ is part of my name. And you can send me an email from under contacts there. You can send me an email if you have questions or if you have some ideas, send it on over. I appreciate that. We need to remember also that in the general election that you need to vote for both Republicans, and you need to fill out both Republicans' ovals under the House of Representatives for the legislature, because you have 2 representatives. So in order to keep the seat Republican, you have to vote for 2 of them. Don't single shot one or the other. Not for me, not for Walt, no, not either way. Both of us have to come up with the winning number of votes, because in the end, the people who are seated in the legislature will be those who have the 2 highest quantities of votes. So we want to make sure that that is our Republicans that get the highest quantities of votes. So vote for 2.
And as you explained it, there'll be 4 candidates in
Yes.
that slot?
Yes.
Okay.
So there'll be 4 names there. Just remember to vote for the 2 Republicans. And of course, it doesn't say who's a Republican on the ballot. You'll just have to know that we are your Republican representatives.
All right. And Representative Blackman, how about if people want to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
Well, they can go to my website, www.waltblackman.gop. They can also go to my Facebook page, Still Fighting for America, or at the Walt Blackman. And I'm on Twitter at BlackmanWalter.1. And they're able to go to that. And I just want to caveat what Brenda is saying about the vote. It's imperative that people, number one, do their research, understand the issues and what's at stake. Vote for both of us, because we have such a tight margin in the House that if one does not get through, then we could lose the majority, and then we are a blue state, regardless of the presidential election turnout. And as we know, states exercise a lot of authority and power, and we want to make sure that if we don't get the help from the federal government, in some cases that we need, that the state has the power of a Republican House to be able to keep folks safe, protect their guns, make sure that they have school choice, and make sure that bills like the late-term abortion bill that the Democrats are pushing do not get pushed down the throats of Arizona. So please vote for both of us, and that's how they can get in touch with me.
Very good. And a question came in on the phone while we're in break, and maybe this is best addressed by you, Gary, if you don't mind. How can you find out if a candidate running as a Republican or an independent was a Democrat in a previous life, before this election cycle or sometime in the recent past?
Well, the easiest, simplest way first is to just Google the name and see what comes up. Otherwise, I don't, and maybe Walt knows, I don't know of any other means to determine previous party designations. And Walt, what do you think?
Days as supporting Bernie Sanders, and you know, I'm looking at his page right now, and I'm seeing Democrat. I'm seeing pictures with him with Bernie Sanders. I'm seeing pictures with him at the Democrat National or Coconino Democrat Party. So it's pretty easy. But you know, what we can do is the next time that he is on your show, somebody call in and ask him, you know, why are you portraying being independent when you have donated to Bernie Sanders for the past 30 years? If you were a registered Democrat and you're a known socialist, that's the best way to ask him. And if he dances around the question, then you know that he's full of crap. Excuse the language.
And let me.
That's pretty straightforward, I would say, Representative Blackmer. I think everybody understood that.
Yeah, let me reinforce what Walt and Brenda have said about we've got 4 candidates. State law mandates that the top 2 vote getters are elected. And we want to make sure that those top 2 are Republicans. Primarily because Republicans are law and order politicians versus Democrats that are criminal friendly. But the margin for the majority at the state capitol is so thin to lose one or the other, Walt or Brenda, compromises our ability as Republicans and conservatives to do good business at the state capitol. So remember our names, vote for both Republicans, and we're happy to see them go back to the legislature.
I was going to say, I assume, but as soon as you say, I assume, you know you're in trouble. But I assume that the ballot will say, vote for 2.
It does, but it just says vote for 2, but still people undervote sometimes because they're going down the ballot and it's few exceptions, you only vote for one this in each of the categories. Corporation Commission, you vote for 3 this time. And for the House of Representatives, you'll vote for 2. You always have voted for 2, and sometimes people get it mixed up. So we just want to make sure we get that clear in their mind that they need to vote for both Republicans. And we're hoping we have enough name identification that when you see our name on the ballot, you know we are Republicans, and you know that we're here to work for you.
Representative Blackman, you have anything you can add on that, on the vote for 2 situation?
To be putting out, our campaign is going to be putting out a sample ballot, what the ballots looks like. They come from the Secretary of State. I posted on my website, and I posted on my Facebook, so people can actually see what those ballots look like, and to vote for 2. I would also encourage people to, if you can, go in and use a paper ballot to vote. That is a little bit more secure than the other methods we have. So if you go in ask for a paper ballot. And there is no rush when you're voting. You can you don't have to get in there and vote. Take 2 minutes to vote. You can take your time, make sure you have the right information, and make sure you circle all the oval shapes, and that you're voting for the people that you want to represent you. So, but folks can go to my Facebook or my live feeds, and I will be talking about the voting process and the ballot, so folks understand what to look for.
Very good. Thank you for that. All right. We have a number of other races, Republican candidates, and we'll talk about some of those in the county and the outcomes.
Yeah, I think KMOG pretty well covered the local and county races in those wins, and we're consuming our time here. So, a quick overview on the federal level. Senator McSally crushed her competition. She got 77%, a stunning percentage number. 77.3% of the vote. And that kind of reflects independents crossing over and requesting a Republican ballot and voting for McSally. The other interesting numbers that I'm seeing in the state and local, state and county races is nearly all those Republicans winning won by probably 30 or so % more in total number of votes cast than the Democrats. And that's a pretty good signal for the Trump campaign if this is happening elsewhere around the state. For example, McSally in Gila County got 5,484 votes, and Kelly came in at 33,304. So big difference that looks good for any Republican running for state office in the state.
And I attribute that to Senator McSally coming to our fabulous Republican dinner here a couple of weeks ago, and I'm sure that boosted her vote total, as it was for Dr. Gosar as well.
Yeah, and Gosar also crushed his competition and won by 70.7% over Anne Marie Ward.
One of the things that we talked about off-air before we went on this morning, and maybe Brenda or Representative Blackman will weigh on this as well, but there are political commercials that are running that say not authorized by any candidate, and I heard one this morning, actually saw it on television in the early morning news, that was anti-McSally and made a lot of allegations about her and her voting record and what she believes and so on and so forth, not attributed to anyone, but obviously if they're buying cable news, it was on the Fox Morning program. There's a lot of money out there that's trying to unseat some of these Republican candidates.
Arizona has been targeted by the Democratic National Committee as a must-do state. They must win Arizona. And so they're accumulating and distributing an awful lot of money, opposition money, against Republicans. So it's going to be a tough year. And Walt, perhaps you could have a better idea of explaining these folks that are putting up ads and not authorized by a candidate.
The candidates are supposedly not have to have any kind of contact with, but these folks are independent organizations that have an interest in turning Arizona blue. And since there's no we can't rein these folks in. They can say anything they want about candidates and that end up being untruths, such as the ad that you were referring to this morning from about Martha McSally. You will see more of these ads come down to the local level, at the state level, that'll go out against Brenda and I, and these ads are just, they are trying to appease to the low level area of folks that really are not engaged in the everyday politics. and have not really dialed in. Before I got into this, I was that also. I was concentrated on the presidential election and all the other elections, or folks that were running up underneath that ticket. Typically people really don't pay attention to. And the mailers that come to the house, to these folks' homes, if that's all they see, and they do no further research, then a person is going to take down the president's voting ballot. That's why it's really important for this year for people to really do their homework. A lot of money does not mean a candidate is good. A lot of mailers or the radio waves being flooded with negative messages does not mean that candidate is a good candidate. It just means that candidate has a lot of money to spread propaganda. And if you know your history, that's how Germany, that's how Hitler took over Germany, with propaganda. People didn't do their research. They didn't dig in to the facts, and that's what we are having here. Not comparing the Democrat Party to the Nazi Party, but the methods of overflowing the public with social media ads and newspaper ads, so forth, and that is what they are trying to do. So we have to pay real attention to making sure that people do their homework, they do their research, and they pick the best candidate that's going to represent them. So it's important that we do that.
It seems that most of the people who are listening this morning are those interested voters who are paying attention to the issues and may not be fooled by a tricky negative campaign. But what we also know that even though we did pretty well compared to the rest of the state in Gila County, we have 1 out of 2 that chooses, that's registered to vote, that chooses not to vote on election day, and that's a serious problem.
Yeah, it is, and picking up on what Walt was describing about these groups, many of them, in addition to obviously being Democrat-backed, are never Trumpers. That are going out, they're Republicans that they dislike the loss of their power with the establishment and are out to get Trump to restore their power and income, if you will, in Washington, D.C. So we've got a wise audience. We've been talking to KMOG audiences for 6 years now, Andy. They're pretty educated. That's why we typically are either first or second in the total number of turnout of all counties in the state. It's a terrific audience. They're smart, they learn, and they get out and vote.
Brenda, but what about the other half, the people who are registered but are not showing up to vote? What can you say to them, and is there any hope for changing that equation?
Well, look, there's always hope. We just need to implore and provide real information for them, not propagandized advertising. And as Walt said, most of those things, we call them IEs, which stands for Independent Expenditure. And they do have to report to the Secretary of State, and those numbers on the dollar amounts can be located through Secretary of State's website. And you can see, well, and for and or against, I have to be registered with the Secretary of State. So you can find out how many dollars they're spending on which candidates. We just need to remember that, come on folks, you registered to vote. At the time you had an interest in your community and your state. So we need you to vote. We need your help. We need you to show up and vote. If you're not on the early ballot list, if something comes up and you can't make it, somebody will come pick you up and take you to the polling place. You make a call and we'll come and get you, and so that you can vote. It's important that you vote. Good citizenship. We need folks that are good citizens and understand what's going on in their communities and their counties and their state. Those are the three levels we have to really, those are the only things we really have that much control over. We don't have very much control over Washington DC, as you can tell. So, unfortunately, but, you know, if we can't take care of our own backyard, we're never going to take care of anything else. So we really need to look after our communities. Thank you.
Great. Well, let's move on up to the Trump campaign area. And Andy's got some successes of the Trump campaign.
That's right. And I just encourage everybody out there to help Brenda Barton and help Walt Blackman help Donald Trump save America. So some of the things that happened here just in the immediate past, on Saturday, which is 2 days ago here, President Trump signed a series of executive orders on the coronavirus pandemic to help ameliorate that. As you know, the House of Representatives is stuck in limbo and are unable to pass any legislation currently. Well, President Trump has stepped out ahead of the parade and is making things happen. He's also extended unemployment benefits. The Nancy Pelosi just allowed the unemployment benefits to collapse for her own reasons, but President Trump has pushed that through. He's also pushed through a deferment of student loan repayments. So there are people out there that have student loans. Those payments have been, the moratorium on those payments has been extended through the end of the year. Trump's also extended, and this is really a big deal. I'm disgusted with Nancy Pelosi, for heaven's sakes. But President Trump has extended the unemployment, the bonus unemployment, the Corona bonus for unemployment benefits. They're now people will be getting, that are out of work, people will be getting $400 per week over and above their ordinary unemployment situation here. And good for us out here in the West, in Arizona, SUP has signed the Great American Outdoors Act. Specifically, $900 million each and every year, permanent funding for land and water conservation stuff, an allocation of $9.5 billion to restore facilities and infrastructure in our national parks and public land. And Charlie, this is very, very badly needed. In Arizona, we like our outdoors, we like our parks, and we use them. And people come from all over the world to see the wonders of Arizona, and they need to be kept up and spruced up and kept in good shape. $9.5 billion for that kind of stuff. There's a jobs and infrastructure package that goes along with this that will create over 100,000 infrastructure-related jobs. And as we know, jobs connected to the infrastructure, building shorthand, building roads and that sort of stuff, those tend to be higher paid jobs. And this will create 100,000 new jobs for that. And we will renew our national parks and protect our local lands, bring much needed maintenance to our parks and public lands. And so that's all good. Not just one thing that he's done here just in the last few days. And good news for those of us that are interested in helping Trump save America. The approval rating is now over 50%. There were 1.8 new jobs created in July in the United States.
1.8 million.
I'm sorry, 1.8 million new jobs created just in July. This is following on heavy job creation in previous months too. Unemployment now is down to 10.2%. The Supreme Court has ruled favorably on the border wall. As everybody knows, the Democrats do not believe in having a border with Mexico. They think that anybody in the world should be able to walk across that border, and as presidential candidate Biden said, immediately be available for all benefits. All they have to do is sneak across the border, and then they get all benefits. That's what they believe. Supreme Court said the border wall is just fine. And in key states, particularly in Arizona, but in other key states as well, more Republican voter registrations than Democrat voter registrations. So we're on the right track, and we need to keep pushing, pushing, pushing.
And we're listening to the Gila County Republican Party's summary of what's happened in the election. We'll be back with some final thoughts right after this. Welcome back to Rim Country Forum. Charlie Seraphin here with our guest this morning, Gary Morris, the chairman of the Republican Party for Gila County. And Brenda Barton's been in studio, Andy McKinney, and on the telephone, Representative Walt Blackman. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. Final thoughts and a chance to say adios.
Yeah, Charlie, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that Wednesdays at our office right here in Payson, between 4 and 6 is when the Women for Trump will be getting together. Every Wednesday, 4 to 6 at the office.
And that's 434 South Beeline Highway. And let me also comment about Trump's eject voters. It's about time. The Democrats have delayed 2 previous packages. They want to insert stuff that's not even related to the COVID recovery effort. So thank you, Mr. President. We've been speaking about some of the decisiveness that's in politics. The Gallup poll finds 84% of Americans say the media is the blame for U.S. political divide.
There you go. And thank you for listening this morning. You're listening to KMOG in Payson. Join us again tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock for Rim Country Forum.